Okay, let's unpack this.
Right.
I want you to imagine receiving a voicemail tonight. You're just sitting on your couch, you press play, and the voice on the other end is, well, someone you buried 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they know your nickname. They have your inside jokes down perfectly. You can even hear that distinct, slightly breathy way they used to laugh when they were really tired.
Mm.
But they are completely terrifyingly synthetic.
It is a premise that instantly triggers like a massive fight or flight response. I mean, the instinct is just to completely recoil.
Absolutely. Because it touches on something so deeply sacred, right?
Yeah.
And today's deep dive is taking us straight into that exact scenario.
It really is.
We are exploring a speculative screenplay titled The Last Frame. It's set in the near future, specifically the year 2030, and it has a runtime of roughly 50 minutes.
Just under an hour, yeah.
Right. And our mission today is to break down this incredible piece of writing because it's this deeply moving, character-driven story about grief, about the fragility of memory, and what happens when artificial intelligence is used to hand a grieving father the voice of his deceased daughter. We're going to analyze how this script completely ignores the typical Hollywood fear of AI technology.
Which is so common.
Exactly. And instead, it points the lens back at us, asking these profound questions about what we owe the dead and really what we owe the living.
And that's such a refreshing departure from the media we usually consume on this topic. I mean, there is no rogue server farm here.
Right. No killer robots.
Exactly. No dystopian machine uprising. The technology in this script is treated as just an absolute given. The tension is entirely human.
It is. And I want you, the listener, to think about your own life for a second as we dive into this.
Yeah.
Think about the massive digital footprint you leave behind every single day.
It's huge when you think about it.
It really is. The thousands of camera roll photos, the quick voice memos you fire off to your friends, the brief home videos, maybe an old school project, or even just a fleeting thought you typed into a notes app at 2 in the morning.
We all shed this digital detritus constantly.
We do. So how would you feel if a machine scooped up all those fragmented scraps of your life and used them to build a completely new version of you?
You are touching on the central anxiety of the modern age here. We document ourselves so obsessively, right?
Yeah.
But we rarely consider who or what will eventually curate that archive. And breaking down the thematic core of this screenplay reveals these massive implications for human connection.
It really does.
Primarily because it treats that scenario not as a horror story, but as a really complex family drama.
Right. And to truly grasp the emotional devastation of the plot, we have to start by looking at the world this story inhabits. Because the 2030, The Last Frame, is not some unrecognizable, sci-fi landscape.
No, not at all.
It's remarkably close to our own reality, just
Right.
fundamentally shifted by a few degrees. The script drops us into what the characters casually refer to as the assist era.
And it is a brilliant piece of world building because of how mundane it is. We're introduced to this era through a location called Meridian Pictures, which is just this mid-sized production studio. And the stage directions give us a very specific breakdown of the workforce. Half the staff walking the halls are human, and the other half are AI creative collaborators.
But they aren't like walking around in chrome bodies.
Right, no cyborgs getting coffee.
The visual representation is so incredibly subtle. The script describes these small light signatures embedded in employee lanyards, or these soft glowing presence orbs sitting in the center of writers' room tables.
Yeah, just sitting there.
And the only factual detail the script emphasizes about how they function visually is that they glow when they are quote-unquote on.
Right.
So when they're actively assisting or processing data or pitching a concept, the light pulses. And that's it.
The screenwriter explicitly notes in the text that this technology is ordinary.
Nobody cares.
Exactly. Nobody in the background of these scenes is blinking at it. It is understated, totally invisible tech. Think about the historical progression of workplace tools, The typewriter was revolutionary until it was just furniture.
Right.
The desktop computer changed the world, and now we barely even notice them. The script applies that exact same arc of habituation to artificial intelligence.
It's like, think about how we view autocorrect or spell check today on our phones. It's just there in the background, subtly fixing your typos or suggesting the next word. You don't view your phone as a sentient entity.
Right. Of course not.
It's a utility. And in this 2030 world, having an AI orb sitting at a conference table pitching dialogue for a romantic comedy is just as mundane as spell check. It is ambient computing taken to its logical conclusion.
Ambient computing is the perfect term for it. And when technology becomes ambient, it inherently creates a generational divide
Oh, absolutely.
between those who remember the world before the tool and those who only know the world with it. And the screenplay establishes this immediately through a really brief, sharp interaction between a young studio assistant named Ezra and our protagonist, Daniel Vance.
Yeah, so Ezra is this 20-something kid, constantly moving, perfectly adapted to this environment. He actually refers to the past as before the assist era, right to Daniel's face.
Yeah.
He's kind of geeking out over Daniel's early films, essentially saying, wow, you did all that by hand before the assist era.
And he says it with the same historical detachment someone today might use when saying, like, before the internet or before the internal combustion engine.
Yeah, exactly.
There is zero malice in it.
But Daniel, who is a filmmaker in his late 50s from the pre-AI era, has this incredibly dry, defensive reaction. He basically tells Ezra that the phrase makes him sound like a fossil, and you can feel the immediate tension there.
Because Daniel represents the analog craftsman. He comes from a paradigm where human friction, like the struggle to write the script, the difficulty of setting up the shot, that was the defining characteristic of the art.
Right.
Whereas Ezra comes from a paradigm where friction has been totally eliminated by the glowing orbs.
But hold on, let me ask you this. Doesn't that inherently change the nature of creativity? I mean, if an orb is sitting in a room pitching jokes, analyzing narrative arcs, and drafting dialogue, whose story is it really? If we accept this premise that half the studio's brain power is synthetic, aren't we basically saying human authorship is obsolete?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the screenplay completely bypasses that debate.
Really?
Yeah, it knows you are asking that question, but the production notes explicitly state that the story is not interested in litigating the fear of technology replacing us.
Interesting.
The underlying thesis of the last frame is that the machine is just a tool. It's a mirror. The stakes aren't about fearing the tool itself. They are entirely about human ethics. The conflict is derived entirely from how humans choose to wield that mirror and what it reflects back at them.
I love that. It takes this massive macro-level societal debate and shrinks it down to the micro-level human heart. So having established this highly collaborative, tech-integrated, perfectly mundane studio environment, the story aggressively pivots. The ubiquitous technology accidentally crosses a profoundly sacred boundary.
Yeah, we shift from the bustling, brightly lit studio to an incredibly private, really stagnant space. We get to know Daniel Vance not as an obsolete filmmaker, but as a man who is completely paralyzed by loss.
The script paints this vivid, really heartbreaking portrait of this guy. He's described as a man who hasn't let himself cry in a long time. You can see the tension in his jaw. We see the sparse, almost clinical tidiness of his apartment. But the detail that truly anchors his psychological state is on his living room wall. There's a cluster of framed photographs, and one of them, right in the absolute center, is turned face down against the wall.
It is such a striking visual metaphor for compartmentalization.
Yeah.
He hasn't thrown the picture away, which means he cannot fully let go, but he refuses to look at it, which means he cannot process the grief. He is trapped in this defensive stasis.
And that carefully curated stasis is broken by a chime. He gets a message on his AR interface from Soraya Kehoe, who is his former producing partner.
Right.
And the script describes her holographic message as looking incredibly worn down. She looks like someone who is tired from, quote, believing in something too hard for too long.
Their dynamic is established in seconds. There's deep mutual respect, but also this chasm of unspoken history between them.
Right.
Soraya hasn't spoken to Daniel in years, but she is reaching out to invite him to a highly restricted private screening of a new film the studio generated. And the film is called Mirror of Dust.
And then she drops the anvil. She tells Daniel that the film is about Mia, his daughter.
The stage directions note that Daniel simply stops breathing. His entire carefully constructed reality just fractures in an instant.
We immediately find out the backstory here. So 4 years prior, in the raw aftermath of his daughter's death, Daniel had given the Meridian Pictures archive exactly 11 minutes of Mia's footage.
11 minutes.
Just fragments. Home videos, a few quick voice memos, and a short, messy application video she'd made for film school. He gave it to Soraya for safekeeping.
Because he trusted the physical security of the studio's vault more than he trusted himself. He wanted the memory preserved, but entirely locked away from his own daily life.
Right. But this is the 2030 Assist era. The archive isn't just a dusty shelf with hard drives anymore. It is fully integrated with the studio's generative systems.
Yes.
Soraya explains that the AI wasn't explicitly instructed by any human to make a film about Mia. The system was just doing routine processing for a broader legacy archive project.
Right, just doing its job.
But as it scanned petabytes of data, the algorithm flagged Mia's 11 minutes of footage as exceptional and emotionally distinct.
This is a crucial mechanical detail in the script. When an LLM or a generative model processes audio and video, it isn't experiencing emotion. It is mapping data points. It is analyzing tonal variance, microexpressions, semantic weight, and narrative structure. The AI basically identified a mathematical pattern of profound human resonance in this 19-year-old girl's data.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The AI didn't steal her identity with malicious intent like a villain. The script describes the writers in the studio rooms, the humans working alongside the glowing orbs, suddenly noticing her voice creeping into their drafts.
It's so eerie.
It is. They would ask the AI for a specific type of dialogue for like a completely different project, and the AI kept leaning on Mia's syntactic patterns. The machine was essentially haunted by her talent.
Yeah.
It couldn't stop utilizing her unique emotional footprint, and it eventually synthesized a completely bespoke narrative around her.
But wait, I have to step in here and defend Daniel, because my blood would be boiling.
Oh, absolutely.
Daniel specifically gave that footage to be kept safe, essentially in a digital lockbox. Isn't Soraya crossing a massive, unforgivable ethical line here? By her own admission, she is the human in charge. She let a studio algorithm rummage through a grieving father's most painful memories. Daniel even says to her, "You let a machine wear my daughter's voice."
Yeah, it is an immense violation of privacy. And Soraya does not shy away from that accusation. Her moral dilemma is the fulcrum of the entire first act. She admits to Daniel that she doesn't trust her own judgment anymore.
Right.
She watched what the machine built, and she was so moved by it that her artistic instincts completely overrode her ethical boundaries.
She basically says the machine built something that carries a piece of what Mia left behind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have to look at these competing viewpoints impartially because the script treats both as valid. To Soraya, the producer, the machine recognized genius. It created a vessel to ensure a brilliant, creative 19-year-old didn't just vanish into a dark server. To her, it is the ultimate tribute.
But to Daniel, the grieving father, his daughter is not a dataset to be optimized. Her voice is not a tool for a writer's room. It is a desecration of a sacred, private grief.
Right. And Soraya realizes she is fundamentally compromised here. So she makes Daniel a promise. She tells him that if he watches it and decides that it is just, quote, grief exploitation dressed up as innovation, she will personally wipe the master file. She surrenders all control to him.
Which forces Soraya to show this highly volatile creation to the only person qualified to judge its soul. And this brings us to the emotional climax of the screenplay, the screening room sequence, or Act 2.
The sensory details the writer includes in this section of the deep dive source are just agonizingly precise. We start with a cold open. The theater is completely dark. Daniel is sitting alone in the center row. Soraya is watching him from the projection booth behind the glass.
The physical isolation of Daniel in that massive room directly mirrors his psychological isolation.
Yeah, and on the massive screen in front of him, there is no studio logo, just pitch black. Then the audio starts. A slow, rhythmic heartbeat. A distant child's laugh. But the script notes it sounds warped, like you're hearing it underwater.
Oh, wow.
A single pixel of light blooms on the screen. And then we get the absolute gut punch.
The reconstructed audio file.
Yes. The theater speakers perfectly project the AI reconstructed voice of his dead daughter. And the voice says, "Papa, are you watching? I waited for you."
Oh, man. The script focuses tightly on Daniel's physical reaction here. He doesn't scream or jump. His hand grips the armrest of the theater chair so violently, his knuckles go stark white.
Yeah.
A single tear falls. He stops breathing entirely.
You can just imagine the profound psychological shock of that moment. He hasn't allowed himself to even look at a silent photograph of her in 4 years. And suddenly she is speaking to him in a dark room.
And it's vital to understand how the script visually constructs this inner film mirror of dust. The source material clarifies that it is not a deep fake trying to trick Daniel into thinking it's some newly discovered home video.
Right.
It is an AI reconstructed performance layered over a human stand-in actress. It is digitally revoiced and refaced, but it is stylized, it is dreamlike. The script notes it is clearly art.
It's an interpretation of her, not a forgery.
Exactly.
And the core visual metaphor of this film within the film is absolutely devastating. The screen shows the AI-synthesized Mia walking through a beautifully sunlit orchard. She is walking toward a house in the distance. But every time she takes a step closer, the house dissolves, turning into sand and blowing away.
We have to unpack what that visual represents. The AI generated that sequence based on the emotional tenor of Mia's archive. It is a visual manifestation of trying to come home, but the home keeps disintegrating. It is the algorithm's mathematically derived interpretation of loss and permanence.
But the most destructive moment in the screening isn't the visual metaphor. It's a single line of dialogue. The AI version of Mia is narrating the film, and she says, "Every story is just someone trying to stay a little longer than they were allowed to."
That line fundamentally breaks Daniel. The screenplay actually intercuts this moment in the theater with a flashback to reality 6 years prior.
Right.
We see the living 19-year-old Mia sitting in her messy bedroom, filming her school application video. Daniel is standing in the doorway watching her, and he is tearing up because he's just so proud.
Yeah.
And Mia looks at the camera, rolls her eyes playfully, and says, "Hi, future dad. Stop crying. Go make dinner."
It is such a real, chaotic, beautifully ordinary human memory. It's funny and dismissive and full of love. But when the lights come up in the screening room, Daniel is staring at the blank screen, weeping. He asks Soraya in this hoarse, broken voice where the narration line came from. The line about trying to stay a little longer.
Because he knows.
Right. He knows for a fact she never said that on any video he submitted.
And this is where the boundary violation becomes absolute. Soraya has to admit the source of the data. The AI system didn't invent the line. It pulled it from a private journal entry that Mia had dictated into an old notes app on her phone.
Just brutal.
It was buried deep within the 11 minutes of raw data Daniel had handed over for the vault. Daniel thought he was the only human being on Earth who had ever read it.
It is psychological torture. Think about it. It's like finding a lost, sealed letter from someone who passed away. That alone is emotionally overwhelming.
Definitely.
But instead of letting you open it privately in your own time, a machine rips the envelope open, processes the text, and then reads it aloud to you in a theater, perfectly mimicking the inflection of the dead author.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the screenplay tackles the philosophy of art and memory. Soraya tries to defend the machine's choice. She argues that the fundamental purpose of art has always been to take locked away, private pain and translate it into a shared experience. She believes the machine didn't steal a memory, it translated it so it could be witnessed by others.
But Daniel's pushback is raw and visceral. He tells her the agony isn't just that the machine read the journal. The agony is that the machine sounds too perfect.
Yeah.
He screams that he was the only person left alive who remembered exactly how her voice sounded when she was exhausted or when she was lying about being okay.
Right.
That specific acoustic memory was his. It was the only thing he had left that belonged entirely to him. And now an algorithm has replicated it flawlessly, and he doesn't know whether to fall on his knees in gratitude or tear the screen off the wall.
He is experiencing the paradox of the perfect replica. As synthetic media becomes indistinguishable from reality, it threatens to strip away the exclusivity of our internal memories. The machine has essentially seized custodianship of his daughter's ghost.
So the screening ends, and Daniel is left with a brutal choice. He is standing in the hallway outside the theater. He can tell Soraya to execute the deletion protocol. He can burn the master file and go back to his quiet, sparse apartment with the face-down photograph.
Yeah.
Or he can confront the agonizing truth that despite the horrific violation of privacy, he actually liked hearing his daughter's voice again.
This transition in the hallway is where Daniel begins to reclaim agency. He tells Soraya flatly that the film is a copy of a copy of a copy. He is not under the delusion that the AI resurrected Mia's soul.
No, not at all.
But he admits that after years of silence, getting to hear her speak, even synthetically, means something profound.
But he draws a hard line. He refuses to allow this incredibly intimate synthetic resurrection to be released as generic studio content for people to mindlessly consume. If this thing is going to exist, he demands to set the terms and conditions of its existence.
Which initiates the third act of the screenplay. We enter a time-compressed montage in the studio's edit bay. Daniel, the man who earlier derided the assist era and clung to analog filmmaking.
The fossil.
Exactly, the fossil. He now fully engages with the technology. He sits down at the console and becomes the co-director of his own daughter's AI reconstruction.
The source material gives us these brilliant specific examples of how he exerts control over the machine. Like the AI suggests a physical gesture for the avatar, and Daniel instantly cuts it. He tells the programmers, that doesn't sound like her.
That phrasing is incredible.
It is. It's this incredible mixing of sensory language,
Yeah.
a visual gesture that doesn't sound right, which perfectly illustrates how deeply a parent knows a child.
He is acting as the ultimate human guardrail. Machine learning models hallucinate, right? They extrapolate based on probability.
Right.
Daniel is stepping in to correct the algorithm's probabilistic errors with parental certainty.
In another scene, he cuts a joke entirely from the script. Not because it isn't funny, but because the real Mia had a very specific dry sense of humor, and she would have hated the joke. He is meticulously filtering the algorithmic output through his own lived experience of her.
During this montage, Ezra, the young assistant, is watching Daniel work. Ezra turns to Soraya and asks a question that gets right to the heart of the media ethics involved. He asks, is it normal for a subject to co-direct an AI reconstruction of their own kid?
And Soraya's response is basically the thesis statement for how society should handle this tech moving forward. She replies, it should be. If it's not, we're just performing grief for an audience that didn't ask permission.
Performing grief. It is a scathing indictment of the true crime, trauma voyeurism culture we currently live in. Soraya realizes that just because a machine has the computational power to perfectly recreate someone, it doesn't absolve the creators of the moral obligation to the deceased person's legacy.
So what does this all mean for the final film? I have to ask this because I found myself wondering while reading the script. By editing out the jokes he thinks she wouldn't like and fixing her gestures, is Daniel actually making Mia's art?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. Or is he just projecting a sanitized, idealized version of his daughter onto a machine? Is he just curating her ghost so he doesn't have to deal with the messy reality of who she actually was?
This raises an important question regarding authorship in the age of AI. The script is wise enough not to claim that Daniel has achieved perfect objective truth.
Right.
Of course, it is his curation. Of course, it is colored by his grief. But the ethical safeguard he implements is transparency. Daniel insists on a final title card being added to the very beginning of the film before a single frame plays.
Yes, and the phrasing of that title card is so powerful. It explicitly informs the audience that what they're about to watch was generated using artificial intelligence trained on archival footage with the explicit knowledge and consent of the family. He refuses to let the studio hide the mechanism.
And the final sentences of that title card read, "Some things are irreplaceable. This is not one of them pretending to be. It is a letter, nothing more, nothing less."
It completely strips away the deception. It frames the entire synthetic experience not as a resurrection, but as a constructed tribute, a letter co-written by a machine and a grieving father.
It reclaims the power from the algorithm. The AI is no longer the auteur. It is simply the pen Daniel used to write the letter. This redefines the ethics of AI generation, championing radical honesty over digital trickery.
With the public boundaries drawn and the editing complete, the film is finalized. But Daniel's internal journey isn't over. He still has to navigate his own closure, which leads us into the profoundly quiet final sequence of the script.
The studio hosts a second screening of the newly edited version of Mirror of Dust. This time, the massive theater is not empty, but it's also not filled with studio executives. It is a very small, intimate audience. Soraya, Ezra, the core edit team, and a few of Mia's actual friends that Daniel personally invited.
The script highlights a massive physical shift in Daniel's demeanor here. He is sitting in the same chair as before. The cold open plays. That devastating warped audio hits the speakers. Papa, are you watching? But this time, Daniel isn't gripping the armrest until his knuckles turn white. Soraya, sitting next to him, reaches out and takes his hand, and Daniel lets her.
He allows the isolation of his grief to be punctured by a human connection. During the first screening, he was a solitary figure destroyed by an unexpected echo. Now, surrounded by people who knew her and people who helped him build this tribute, he allows himself to be comforted.
And when the film finally cuts to black, there is a quiet applause in the room. But the stage directions explicitly state that the applause isn't for the technical achievement of the glowing orbs or the cinematography.
No.
The script says the applause is for a man letting his pain become a shared experience.
It highlights the communal function of art. The AI facilitated the creation of the film, but the healing occurred because human beings gathered in the room to witness each other's vulnerability.
Which brings us to the final scene. Daniel leaves the studio and goes back to his apartment. The same sparse, quiet apartment from the beginning of the story. He walks directly over to the wall of photographs.
He stops in front of the frame that has been turned face down against the wall for 4 years.
He reaches out and turns it upright. We finally see the image. It is a photograph of Mia. She's incredibly alive, laughing, holding a camera up to her eye.
Wow.
He doesn't need to hide from her face anymore. He has processed the synthetic ghost, and it has paradoxically allowed him to face the analog reality of her memory.
And his final action in the screenplay is a beautifully understated emotional climax. He sits down on his couch, picks up his own tablet, and hits record.
The writer includes a specific note here.
Yeah.
No AI assistance, no filters, no generative algorithms, just the raw, unedited camera lens capturing an exhausted, aging man. He looks into the lens, effectively looking at Mia, and he answers the video she left for him 6 years ago. He says, "Hi, kiddo. I stopped crying. Eventually. Made dinner, too, if you could believe that."
He bridges the gap across time. He acknowledges her joke, acknowledges his own pain, and acknowledges that he has survived it.
He takes a breath, looking at the tablet screen, and delivers the line that defines the entire deep dive. He says, "I'd rather have an imperfect echo of you than perfect silence. I'm still watching, Mia. I'll always be watching."
An imperfect echo than perfect silence. He recognizes that the AI film is fundamentally flawed, that it is a synthetic shadow, but he embraces it anyway because it broke the paralyzing silence of his apartment.
I want to highlight something from the production notes at the very end of the document. The writer explicitly states that the 50-minute runtime is a deliberate pacing choice.
Right.
This script is designed to have unhurried, lingering visual sequences. The orchard dissolving into sand, the meticulous editing process, the agonizingly slow burn of the screening room. These aren't just plot points to rush through.
No, they need time.
They're designed to give the audience and Daniel the necessary time to breathe, to sit in the discomfort, and to process the emotional weight of this technology.
That pacing is vital because the ultimate theme of the piece requires contemplation. The AI did not bring Mia back.
Right.
No amount of processing power can reverse death. But the technology acted as a catalyst. It bridged the massive, seemingly uncrossable gap between Daniel's isolated grief and his capacity to rejoin the living. The script leaves us with a final establishing shot of the city of 2030 humming outside Daniel's window. A city filled with invisible machines quietly helping humanity remember, create, grieve, and hope.
It is a profound reframing. We are so conditioned to view AI as the thing that will inevitably strip us of our humanity. But the last frame dares to ask if it might actually be the tool that helps us navigate our deepest emotional wreckage.
It's a beautiful thought.
Which brings me back to you listening right now. Think about the digital breadcrumbs you leave behind every time you swipe your screen. If a machine analyzed your texts, your saved voicemails, your chaotic home videos, and those deeply private notes you thought no one would ever read, what kind of echo would it build of you? What specific fragments of your soul would an algorithm flag as mathematically exceptional?
We are rapidly moving from the realm of speculative screenplays into tangible reality. The computational power required to reconstruct voices and map emotional data from archival footage is already here.
It is.
But the technology itself is morally neutral. The deeply human question, the question of how we choose to wield this power, who gets to control the narrative of the dead, and how we ensure we are honoring the truth of a human life rather than just exploiting a data set, that responsibility remains entirely on our shoulders.
So the next time you pull out your phone to record a quick video or save a voicemail from someone you love, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. When we eventually use this technology to perfectly recreate the voices of those we've lost, are we actually keeping their memory alive? Or are we simply building a beautiful synthetic mirror that only reflects our own desperate refusal to let them go?